if I can move it back a little bit, I want to say to the layman out there who wants to ride the Cape Town cycle tour next year, let's say 2026 March, they want to ride that. So they're starting from zero. So we had exactly that conversation with the running coach last month, and he said, just to bring it back, is you put on a pair of shoes, any shoes you've got, and then you start running for a minute and walking for 4 minutes. That's the start of running. So if we bring it to cycling, there's a few more things that you need. You obviously need a bicycle. You need a surface, so either a mountain, a gravel, or tar. So, and let's say someone wants to ride the Cape Town Cycle Tour, which is tar. Where would you start someone like that if they come to you and from a novice? So what must they pick, or do you help someone from that point, or do you normally get people already have their bike? Or
Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, I mean, it's a distant wise for someone that's never been on a bicycle. It's like a mountain in front of.
It's far for someone who doesn't ride much.
Exactly. So I think it's really important to say, okay, I'm going to do it next year. So you've got some time on your side to help with the preparation. You did say that.
You can do it now if you want, but you might have a long day out. Eh?
Yeah. But so coming back, it's like, how would you approach it? What would you suggest? Like,
sure. I mean, I think the main thing is just start riding it. I think you can obviously follow training sessions up front, but most people who come and for coaching or training have typically been riding for a while at least. You don't have to be at a high level, but they've got some sort of basic conditioning. Like with any sport, like there's a certain basal level of conditioning I think you do need. So the main thing I would say is just go ride. You're not going to be really metabolically efficient enough, and fitness, a whole bunch of factors. You're not going to be at the sort of right level to follow a program properly, I would say. So I think for the first couple of months, honestly, do group rides, just ride from A to B, get distance in, just build your basic tolerance to the exercise you're doing. And I think once you at a point where where you're riding 3-4 times a week, I'd say, 6 to 8 hours at least, then I think you're probably in a good space to start maybe getting a bit more specific. But I wouldn't, I think if most people don't really have the efficiency, as I said, and then normally the discipline to actually follow something strictly up front when they've just started an activity. But obviously, I think everyone's different. So,
and start slowly, I think, is the other thing. I think people want to start too hard because a bike lets you do too much. It rolls and you can actually ride too hard, and people ride in their heart rates of, let's say, 170 for too long, and then they don't like the exercise and get injured. So what you're saying is build capacity, build the engine, and bring that back to what we were saying earlier is train in that zones where you actually don't run into that area where you burn too much carbs. You want to ride in the zone 2 or low zone 3 zone to build the engine.
What we actually see with very untrained people is they just use a huge amount of carbohydrates. Even that's more to my adding to the point of why I said I think it's for people who're just starting out, they must actually just go exercise, like whether it's very difficult to train accurately, because I mean, if I have a recreational rider in the lab who's very new to riding, they're going to have incredibly high basal lactate levels. They're going to have pretty much very low fat oxidation, and it takes a long time to build that sort of conditioning, metabolic training, cardiovascular strength, everything else up. So I think it's difficult to actually train accurately when you're that unfit or untrained, because there's just such a morphed sort of spectrum of everything. There's no like stability or homeostasis at any point. And obviously the problem with cycling is bikes are, and gearing and everything else is only made in standards. So most people, their gearing is too hard, so they can't actually ride easy on hills because the gearing's wrong. We see it all the time, even with pretty well-trained recreational riders. They're just over-geared, and I tell them to put smaller trainings on, because then they can ride at the intensities that are correct for them. So the gearing is always a factor, and just the metabolic efficiency, obviously, as you said, like, the distance. Then you also get heat and different terrain. So which bike you're on, like if you're mountain biking, to ride easy up a very steep hill, for a lot of people, the power is just the amount of watts you need to overcome basic factors like gravity going uphill. obviously that's going to be pushing you down. It's more than it's at your threshold, for example. So yeah, I think just go ride. And after a couple of months, 6 months out, you can probably start getting a bit more specific. But cycling is about layering over time, so use it as a carrot, but cycling is a time sport, which is what I tell people quite often, and the more time you spend doing it, the better. Those adaptations just kind of carry on indefinitely. You can always get faster and always get better. And the longer you do it for, the better you just become at handling that stress.
And like for the novice now that started cycling and basically became a weekend warrior, so not much exercising time in the week, got some time over the weekend. For them to complete something like the Cape Town cycle tour, where on a weekend, what type of distance should they be able to do before they think they can do the Cape Town cycle tour?
I mean, yeah, you always want to look at the demands of the event. So the cycle tour is, call it 110 Ks, and it's got about 1,200 meters of climbing. So it's basically 100 meters per 10 Ks. So that's a good reference point if you are training. You don't have to we train in time, not distance, because obviously, distance can be, the amount of time it takes you to cycle that distance is it varies massively due to various factors, especially wind and the type of bike you're using, the terrain, everything else. So, I would say if you can comfortably do 3-4 hours with, around there in terms of 100 meters per 10 Ks, like you'll be able to finish the cycle tour pretty comfortably. So if you're adding in one of those 2-3 times a month, like 50, 60, 70, 80 Ks, like you should be, that'll take for most people at that sort of level around 3-4 hours. Maybe even less or longer, then you're going to be in a good level, I think, to finish. Because like the comrades, you don't have to do the comrades to do the comrades, So as long as I think you have the ability to ride for 3-4 hours comfortably at a, I think anyone could finish the cycle tour. It's quite a low average speed you actually need to make the cutoff. But I mean, yeah, if you can ride at that sort of duration comfortably, you should be able to finish, no problem. Because remember that if you're riding alone or even in a group, you have a big group with the cycle tour and a lot of bunches and people. So drafting will make quite a significant difference as well.
Yeah, and sometimes in podcasts you get these little pearls, and I want to come back. That's a pearl. Is stop thinking about distance and think about time, because that is actually, for us that's now cycled a while, is for the novice is get time behind you, not distance, because
absolutely
don't aim for 80K, aim for 2 to 3 hours. That's much better, and then work around that.
Yeah. So I just realized that I've got a problem with the enduro. I've worked on distance and not time. Anyway,
pearl of wisdom, you can take that out of here,